I'm Abigail Mason, 34, and last week I returned to my hometown as the CEO of a multi-million-dollar tech company. I thought my success would finally earn my stepmother Patricia's respect after 20 years of subtle undermining. Instead, I found myself directed to enter my own father's 60th birthday party through the back door, hidden from guests like an embarrassment. The humiliation burned until Eleanor Wellington's voice cut through the kitchen noise. Abigail Mason? Madam CEO of Mason Tech? What are you doing back here? Everything changed in that moment. If you've ever been underestimated by family, let me know where you're watching from and hit that like and subscribe button. You'll want to hear how one moment of recognition can unravel 20 years of family dynamics. Growing up in Mapleton, Wisconsin was like living inside a Norman Rockwell painting. Our town had barely 15,000 people, with neighborhoods where everyone knew your name and business. My childhood home sat on Elm Street, a modest two-story with blue shutters my dad repainted every spring. Until I was 12, that house contained all the happiness a kid could want. Mom and Dad created this perfect little world for me. Mom was an elementary school teacher, beloved by her students and the community. Dad ran a successful local construction company, building everything from homes to the new wing of Mapleton Hospital. They met in high school and never looked at anyone else. In our living room, their prom photo still hung beside my school pictures, their young faces frozen in a moment of pure joy. My mom taught me to read before kindergarten, spending evenings with me curled in her lap as we explored fantastic worlds together. Dad taught me practical things, how to change a tire, basic woodworking, the satisfaction of creating something with your hands. They balanced each other perfectly, giving me both dreams and the tools to build them. When Mom was diagnosed with aggressive breast cancer, I was 11. Everything changed in the space of a doctor's appointment. For 8 months, our lives revolved around hospital visits, medications, and the steady decline of the person who held our family together. I grew up fast that year, learning to cook simple meals and do laundry while Dad spent hours at Mom's bedside. She died on a Tuesday morning in April. I remember because I had a math test that day, and Dad still made me go to school saying Mom would want normalcy for me. He was right, but nothing felt normal again. For nearly 2 years, Dad and I fumbled through grief together. He threw himself into work, taking on more projects than he could handle. I buried myself in books and schoolwork. We were managing in our broken way until Patricia entered the picture. They met at a church grief support group. Dad had started attending at our pastor's insistence. Patricia had lost her husband to a heart attack 3 years earlier and had 2 children, Ryan, who was 14 to my 12, and Jessica, exactly my age. The first time Dad invited them over for dinner, I was excited. The idea of siblings, even step-siblings, seemed like a chance at a different kind of family. Patricia arrived wearing a floral dress and pearl earrings, carrying a homemade apple pie. She complimented our home with the perfect blend of admiration and suggestions for improvement. Her children were polite, if reserved. Ryan seemed uninterested in anything except his early model smartphone, while Jessica and I discovered a shared love of mystery novels. "Your father speaks so highly of you," Patricia told me, helping wash dishes after dinner. "He says you're quite the little genius." I preened under the attention, starved for maternal care after 2 years without it. During their courtship, Patricia visited often, sometimes bringing small gifts for me, hair accessories, flavored lip gloss, things my mother would never have chosen, but that I treasured coming from this elegant woman who might become family. Dad smiled more. The weight on his shoulders seemed lighter. They married 6 months later in a small ceremony at our church. Dad sold our blue-shuttered house. Too many memories, he said. And we moved into Patricia's larger home across town, where she had lived with her late husband and children. The blending of our families wasn't the Brady Bunch scenario I'd imagined. The first cracks appeared during the bedroom assignments. Patricia's children kept their spacious rooms with attached bathrooms while I was given the converted office downstairs next to the laundry room. When I expressed disappointment, Patricia smoothed my hair and explained that Ryan and Jessica would be traumatized by moving rooms after losing their father. "We all need to make sacrifices to become a family," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Your father and I agree this is best." Dad nodded along, avoiding my eyes. Other changes accumulated slowly. Family photos featuring my mother disappeared from common areas, relegated to a single frame in my bedroom. Holiday traditions shifted to match Patricia's preferences. When I mentioned missing our old Christmas Eve ritual of driving around to see lights before opening one present, Patricia reminded everyone that her children found structure important after their loss. At dinner, Ryan and Jessica received subtle preferential treatment: slightly larger portions of dessert, first choice of activities, more attention to their school achievements. Nothing I could point to definitively, but a pattern I felt acutely. The real distance grew between Dad and me. Before Patricia, we'd spent weekends working on projects in the garage or fishing at Lake Mapleton. Now his weekends filled with Ryan's football games and Patricia's social engagements. When I earned straight A's or won the science fair, Dad offered distracted congratulations while rushing to Jessica's choir concert. By 16, I recognized that Patricia wasn't evil, just human, prioritizing her biological children while maintaining the appearance of fairness. The realization didn't make it hurt less. I channeled my loneliness into academics, staying late at school for clubs and study groups, minimizing time at home. My last extended visit home happened 5 years ago, shortly after I secured initial funding for my company. At dinner, I enthusiastically shared my business plans, only for Patricia to interrupt. "Abigail, sweetheart, these tech startups are such a gamble. Ryan's position at your father's company is so much more stable. Perhaps you should consider something similar." Dad cleared his throat. "Patricia has a point, Abby. Security matters, in the long run." That night, I booked an early flight back to Boston. Since then, communication had dwindled to holiday phone calls and occasional emails. When Dad's invitation arrived for his 60th birthday celebration, I hesitated. 5 years of distance, but he was still my father. Despite everything, I wanted to believe we could repair what was broken. The day I left for MIT was the first time I felt truly free. Standing at the Mapleton bus station with 2 overstuffed suitcases, I hugged Dad goodbye while Patricia and her children waited in the car, engine running. Dad slipped me an envelope with $500, more than they could afford, I knew, and whispered, "Make me proud, kiddo." My scholarship covered tuition but little else. Those first semesters, I worked 3 part-time jobs: morning shifts at a campus cafe, evening, data entry for a professor, and weekend hours tutoring high school students. Between work and classes, I averaged 4 hours of sleep. But surrounded by people who valued intelligence and ambition, I thrived. Computer science fascinated me from my first coding class, while other freshmen struggled with basic programming. Concepts, I found a natural language that made perfect sense. By sophomore year, professors were recommending me for research positions typically reserved for graduate students. Home visits dwindled to major holidays, then just Christmas. Each return revealed a household where I fit less and less. Ryan had joined Dad's construction company after community college, gradually taking over client relationships. Jessica attended State University, majoring in communications while planning her wedding to her high school boyfriend, whose family owned the largest car dealership in 3 counties. During one Christmas visit, I excitedly shared my research on predictive algorithm optimization. Mid-explanation, Patricia interrupted to ask if anyone wanted more pie, effectively ending the conversation. Later, I overheard her telling Dad, "It's sweet how passionate she is about her computer hobby." My hobby evolved into specialized expertise in artificial intelligence applications for business analytics. After graduation, I turned down lucrative Offers from tech giants to join a promising startup where I could have greater impact and equity potential. Those early career years taught me harsh lessons about being a woman in tech. In meetings, men repeated my ideas as their own. At conferences, I was mistaken for administrative staff. One potential investor asked if I had a technical boyfriend, helping with my code. Each slight strengthened my resolve. When I was 26, I identified a massive inefficiency in how companies processed customer interaction data. Current solutions missed critical behavioral patterns that could predict future purchasing decisions. For months, I coded nights and weekends, developing a prototype that demonstrated unprecedented accuracy. At 28, I launched Mason Tech with my prototype as our flagship product. The first year nearly broke me. Investors questioned whether I had the experience to lead. Established competitors spread rumors about our technology's limitations. My small team worked from a converted warehouse with inconsistent heating and one functional bathroom. The breakthrough came when a mid-sized retail chain implemented our software and saw a 40% increase in customer retention within 3 months. Suddenly, investors who had dismissed me were calling daily. By year 3, we had 50 employees in offices in Boston and San Francisco. During this period, my relationship with Dad deteriorated further. Our conversations grew, shorter and more superficial. He never asked detailed questions about my company, seeming uncomfortable with my growing success. Patricia controlled the narrative, referring to my work as Abby's Boston job, regardless of milestones achieved. When Mason Tech crossed the 100-employee mark, I called home to share the news. Patricia answered, informing me that Dad was busy helping Ryan expand the construction business. "That's nice, dear," she said about my accomplishment. "Did you hear Jessica is expecting their second child? Your father is so excited about being a grandfather again." The following year, when Forbes included me in their 30 under 30 list, I sent the magazine to Dad. Patricia called to acknowledge receiving it, but mentioned that these lists aren't really about achievement, more about who you know in those coastal cities. Our relationship settled into a pattern of birthday calls, Christmas cards, and surface-level updates. I built a life separate from Mapleton, filling it with friends who celebrated my success, romantic relationships that ultimately faltered under my work schedule, and the growing family of employees who shared my vision. By my 34th birthday, Mason Tech employed over 500 people across 3 countries. Our client list included Fortune 100 companies and government agencies. I had appeared on the cover of Business Weekly and given the commencement address at my alma mater. The skinny, awkward girl from Mapleton had transformed into someone unrecognizable to the family I'd left behind. When Dad's 60th birthday invitation arrived, I almost discarded it. The formal card, clearly chosen by Patricia, requested the honor of my presence, as though I were a distant acquaintance. No personal note, no acknowledgement of our estrangement. I called Ryan, with whom I maintained occasional contact, to gauge the situation. "You should come," he said, sounding tired. "Dad asks about you more than you think. Patricia's going all out for this one, renting the country club, inviting half the town." "Will he even have time to talk to me?" I asked. Ryan paused. "Just come, Abby. He's getting older. We all are." That night, I booked my flight and reserved a rental car, though something in me wanted to arrive in the company helicopter just to see Patricia's face. Instead, I selected a modest but thoughtful gift, a first-edition copy of Dad's favorite Ernest Hemingway novel, and prepared for my return to Mapleton. Driving from Madison Airport to Mapleton felt like rewinding through my own history. The 2-hour journey took me past landmarks that had once defined my world. Lake Mendota, where we'd gone swimming summers. The roadside diner where Dad always stopped for pie. The orchard where Mom took me apple picking every fall. Each familiar sight carried emotions I'd thought safely buried. Mapleton itself had changed, yet remained eerily the same. The main street boasted a few new chain stores, but Wilson's Hardware still anchored the corner, its faded awning a testament to small-town permanence. The high school had a fresh addition, but the same brick facade where I'd waited for buses on countless mornings. Patricia and Dad's house, I could never think of it as mine, sat in Mapleton's most established neighborhood. The Victorian-style home had belonged to Patricia's first husband's family for generations. As I pulled into the circular driveway, I noted the fresh landscaping and new paint job. Patricia had finally gotten the sage green exterior she'd been discussing 5 years ago. Hesitating in the car, I checked my appearance one final time. My tailored black pants and silk blouse projected the confidence I'd cultivated in boardrooms. The emerald earrings, a gift to myself after our latest funding round, caught the afternoon sunlight. I looked successful, put together. A far cry from the uncertain girl who'd left with 2 suitcases and wounded pride. Dad opened the door before I reached it. At 60, he looked older than the number suggested. His hair had turned completely gray, and his shoulders stooped slightly. Still, his smile, the one genuine thing I'd missed, flashed as he pulled me into an awkward hug. "Look at you," he said, holding me at arm's length. "All grown up and fancy." "It's good to see you, Dad," I replied, meaning it despite everything. The moment broke when Patricia appeared behind him, her blonde hair expertly colored and styled, her slim figure showcased in expensive linen pants and a cashmere sweater. "Abigail, you made it," she said, air-kissing near my cheek. "We were beginning to wonder if you'd have to cancel again. Your work keeps you so busy." I'd never canceled a visit, simply declined most invitations, but I swallowed the correction. Wouldn't miss Dad's big day. The house's interior had undergone another renovation since my last visit. The cozy traditional furnishings had been replaced with sleek contemporary pieces in neutral tones. Family photos lined the hallway: Ryan's wedding, Jessica's children, Patricia and Dad on various vacations. My graduation photo from MIT was noticeably absent. "Ryan and Amanda arrived yesterday with the kids," Patricia informed me, leading me through the house. "Jessica and Tyler will be here for dinner with their little ones. Everyone's so excited to catch up with you." Her emphasis on family presence felt pointed, a reminder of my absence from their lives. "We've put you in the blue guest room," she continued. "I hope that's suitable. Ryan and Amanda have the East Suite, and Jessica's family will take the larger guest room when they arrive." The blue guest room was the smallest bedroom, tucked under the eaves with a shared bathroom down the hall. I remembered when it had been used for storage. Meanwhile, Ryan enjoyed the spacious suite with private bath that had once been my suggestion for my own room. "It's fine," I said, following her upstairs. "I won't be here long." As Patricia showed me the room, her comments continued in the same vein, slightly undermining while maintaining plausible deniability. "We weren't sure what you'd want for meals these days. I imagine in Boston you eat all those trendy foods, kale and quinoa and such." "I still enjoy a good Wisconsin cheese curds," I answered, trying to keep things light. She smiled thinly. "Well, we're having pot roast tonight, Ryan's favorite." After Patricia left, I unpacked my small suitcase and sat on the twin bed, fighting a familiar sense of diminishment. Outside my door, I could hear the happy chaos of Ryan's children playing, Patricia's delighted grandmother voice encouraging them. The contrast with her tone to me couldn't have been starker. Dinner that evening expanded to include Jessica, her husband Tyler, and their 2 perfectly dressed children. Jessica had grown into a polished version of Patricia, from her highlighted hair to her country club enunciation. Tyler, I learned, had taken over his father's car dealership and expanded to 3 locations. Their conversation revolved around local gossip, the children's achievements, and Ryan's latest business success. "Dad's letting me take point on the new medical center project," Ryan announced over dessert. "Biggest contract we've ever had." "Your father has basically retired in all but name," Patricia added proudly. "Ryan handles everything important now." Dad nodded along, seeming content with this characterization. When attention reluctantly turned to me, Patricia framed the question carefully. "And how is your computer work going, Abigail? Still with that startup?" Before I could correct her outdated understanding, Jessica jumped in. "I saw something about women in tech struggling with funding. Is that affecting you?" Her concern sounded genuine, but the assumption of struggle was clear. "Actually," I began. "Abigail's always been so independent," Patricia interrupted, "never needing family connections like some people might." The pointed look at Tyler and Ryan made clear who had benefited from such connections. Throughout. Dinner? I noticed Dad's strange passivity. The man who had taught me to stand my ground now deferred to Patricia on everything from conversation topics to whether he wanted more coffee. Each time I tried to engage him directly, Patricia interceded, with a redirection or clarification of what Richard really means. After dinner, I helped clear dishes, overhearing Jessica and Tyler in the living room. "I looked up her company," Tyler said quietly. "If it's the same one, it's actually pretty significant. Business journals have covered it." "Mom says she exaggerates," Jessica replied. "You know how Abby always needed attention." I nearly dropped the plates I was carrying. The characterization was so opposite to who I'd always been. The quiet, studious child who'd worked desperately not to rock the boat, that it took my breath away. Later, I tried to find Dad alone, but he was constantly surrounded by family. Or on the phone with party vendors Patricia had him checking on. When I finally cornered him in his study, Patricia appeared within minutes, clipboard in hand. "Richard, the florist needs confirmation on the centerpieces. Abigail, would you mind? This is rather urgent." That night, lying in the too-small bed in the too-small room, I considered booking an earlier flight back. What had I expected? That success would suddenly make me visible to people who had spent years perfecting the art of not seeing me? Only, the thought of missing Dad's actual birthday kept me from leaving. One more day, I decided. I could endure anything for one more day. The morning of Dad's birthday dawned bright and clear, as if Mapleton itself wanted to celebrate its successful son. I woke early, hoping to have breakfast with Dad before the day's chaos began. Instead, I found Patricia in the kitchen, directing caterers who had already invaded the space. "Good morning, Abigail," she said without looking up from her checklist. "There's coffee in the carafe. I'm afraid breakfast is rather catch-as-catch-can with all the preparations." I poured coffee into a travel mug. "Is Dad around?" "Richard?" "Left with Ryan hours ago. Last-minute errands for tonight." She glanced up briefly. "The party starts at 7. We're doing family photos at 6, so please be ready." I hesitated. "Can I help with anything?" Patricia's pause spoke volumes. "Everything's under control. Perhaps you could stay out of the way. The professionals know what they're doing." Dismissed, I spent the morning driving around Mapleton, visiting old haunts. My elementary school looked smaller than memory suggested. The public library, where I'd spent countless hours hiding from my home situation, had been renovated with a modern glass addition. I stopped at Lily's Cafe, where the owner, my former math teacher's wife, recognized me immediately. "Abigail Mason, I just read about you in my daughter's business weekly." Mrs. Lilly enveloped me in a hug that smelled of cinnamon and coffee. "We're so proud of our local girl making waves." For the first time since arriving in Mapleton, I felt seen. We chatted about my company, her grandchildren, and the changes in town. As I prepared to leave, she squeezed my hand. "Your mother would be bursting with pride, sweetheart." The simple statement nearly undid me. By 5:30, I had returned to the house and changed into my party outfit, an emerald green cocktail dress that complemented my eyes, paired with black Louboutin heels. My hair, usually pulled back for work, fell in loose waves past my shoulders. The woman in the mirror looked confident, successful. I straightened my shoulders, preparing for an evening of Patricia's subtle undermining. When I came downstairs, the photographer was already arranging the family in the living room. Ryan and Jessica with their spouses and children, Patricia directing. Everyone's positioning, Dad standing somewhat bewildered in the center. "Abigail," Patricia called, checking her watch. "You've missed most of the family photos. We had to start without you." "I'm 10 minutes early," I pointed out, checking my own watch. She waved dismissively. "Well, we're finished now. The guests will be arriving any minute." Dad looked over, seeming ready to object, then fell silent at Patricia's hand on his arm. I swallowed hard and nodded, another slight added to the growing pile. The party venue was the house itself, transformed by professional decorators. The main floor gleamed with subtle lighting, floral arrangements, and elegant furnishings rented for the occasion. Catering staff circulated with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. A string quartet played in the corner of the living room. I retreated to the kitchen for a moment of quiet, finding it bustling with catering staff. One young server offered me a champagne flute, which I gratefully accepted. Through the windows, I could see guests arriving, greeted at the front door by Patricia and Dad. After gathering myself, I moved toward the main hallway, intending to join the receiving line. Patricia spotted me and quickly excused herself from greeting guests. "Abigail, there you are. The front entrance is getting rather congested with arrivals." Her smile remained fixed as she spoke. "Would you mind terribly using the back garden door? It leads right to the party area, and we need to keep the main entrance flowing smoothly." I stared at her, processing the request. "You want me to go outside and around to the back of the house, in heels?" "It's just more practical," she insisted. "Richard is getting overwhelmed with all the people coming through at once." Before I could respond, she had turned back to the next arriving guests, exclaiming over their gift with exaggerated delight. Stunned, I stood frozen for a moment. The message couldn't have been clearer if she'd spelled it out. I wasn't part of the family presentation. I was an inconvenience to be routed around the back, like a delivery person or hired help. Pride warred with hurt as I made my decision. Taking a deep breath, I turned toward the side door that led to the garden. The path around the house wasn't long, but it consisted of gravel rather than proper paving. My designer heels sank with each step, collecting dirt and small stones. The back entrance Patricia had directed me to wasn't the French doors leading to the patio where guests mingled. Instead, it was the service entrance that led directly into the catering staging area. As I pushed it open, 3 kitchen staff looked up in surprise. "Ma'am, are you looking for something?" asked one, clearly confused by my formal attire in their workspace. "Apparently this is my designated entrance," I said, attempting humor, despite the humiliation burning my cheeks. They exchanged glances, and one hurriedly cleared a path between stacked trays and equipment. I made my way through the kitchen, painfully aware of the curious stares. One older woman gave me a sympathetic look, as if she understood exactly what had happened. In the narrow pantry connecting the kitchen to the dining room, I stopped, needing a moment to compose myself. The familiar childhood feeling of being unwanted, inconvenient, washed over me with surprising force. I was no longer the awkward teenager, but a successful executive who commanded respect in boardrooms across the country. Yet here, in my father's house, I was still the outsider directed to the service entrance. Tears threatened, and I pressed my fingers against my eyelids, willing them away. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant in Boston about an urgent client matter. The reminder of my real life, my actual value in the world, helped steady me. I was preparing to leave, to grab my purse from upstairs, call a taxi to the Madison Airport and book the next flight out, when I overheard Patricia's laugh from the adjacent dining room. "I simply couldn't have her coming through the front while the Wilsons were arriving," she was saying to someone. "Can you imagine? Abigail always has to make everything about herself." The back entrance was perfectly suitable. The casual cruelty froze me in place. This wasn't a logistical decision. It was deliberate humiliation. 20 years of similar slights flashed through my mind, each one dismissed as oversensitivity or misunderstanding. But there was no misinterpreting this. In that moment, something shifted inside me. I wouldn't give Patricia the satisfaction of driving me away. Instead, I would walk through that door with my head high, project the confidence that had built a multi-million-dollar company, and refuse to be diminished any longer. As I pushed open the swinging door from the pantry, I nearly collided with an elegant older woman in a navy blue dress. She steadied herself, then looked at me with sudden recognition. "Abigail Mason? Is that really you?" I blinked, placing her face after a moment. "Eleanor Wellington, owner of Wellington Industries, the largest employer in the county, and a fixture of Mapleton's business community for 4 decades. I'd met her once during a high school career day, where she'd been unusually encouraging about my interest in technology." "Mrs. Wellington," I acknowledged with a genuine smile. "Yes, it's me." She looked around the service area with confusion. "Abigail Mason, Madam CEO of Mason Tech? What are you doing back here with the catering staff?" Her voice carried in the momentary lull of conversation. Several heads turned our way, including Patricia's, who had just entered the dining room with a tray of decorative napkins. I started, but Eleanor continued, her voice growing more animated. "I read your profile in Forbes last month. Your predictive customer analytics platform is revolutionizing how businesses understand consumer behavior. My company implemented your software last quarter, and our marketing efficiency has improved 30% already." More people had turned toward us now, curiosity piqued by Eleanor's enthusiastic praise. Patricia stood frozen, the napkin tray clutched in white-knuckled hands. "You're too kind," I said, genuinely touched by her recognition. "We're constantly refining the algorithms to improve accuracy. Modest as well as brilliant," Eleanor declared, linking her arm through mine. "Come, you must tell me about your expansion plans. Are the rumors true about the government contracts?" As she led me into the main party area, I glimpsed Patricia's face, a mixture of shock and dawning comprehension. For perhaps the first time, she was seeing me not as Richard's inconvenient daughter, but as someone important in my own right. Eleanor's status in Mapleton meant that her interest immediately conferred legitimacy. As we moved through the room, she introduced me to various business leaders, many of whom recognized my name from industry publications. "Mason Tech. My brother's company in Chicago uses your software. He says it's transformed their business model. Didn't I just read about your new international office? Singapore, wasn't it? Your TED Talk on ethical AI applications was fascinating." With each introduction, the reality of my success became more concrete in this setting where I'd been invisible for so long. I noticed Dad watching from across the room, confusion evident on his face as he observed people he'd known for decades treating his daughter with unexpected deference. Patricia materialized at Dad's side, whispering urgently in his ear. His expression shifted from confusion to surprise, then something that might have been pride mixed with embarrassment. Eleanor kept me by her side as more guests approached, curious about the local girl who'd made good. I answered questions about our technology, carefully translating complex concepts into accessible explanations. Years of investor pitches had honed this skill to perfection. Abigail was always the brightest student in her class. Patricia's voice suddenly cut in as she joined our group, her smile fixed and brittle. "We always knew she'd do something interesting with computers." Eleanor raised an eyebrow. "Interesting. Seems rather understated for building a company valued at over $200 million, wouldn't you say?" Patricia's smile faltered. "Of course, we're very proud. Richard, isn't it wonderful how everyone knows about Abigail's work?" Dad had appeared beside her, looking slightly dazed. $200 million? He asked, his voice barely audible. "Last valuation," I confirmed quietly. "We're expecting that. to double after our next funding round. Something shifted in Dad's expression. Recognition, perhaps, of how little he knew about my life, combined with dawning awareness of what Patricia had done by relegating me to the back entrance. "Abby, I had no idea," he said, using my childhood nickname for the first time since I'd arrived. "We haven't really talked in a long time, Dad," I replied, keeping my voice neutral despite the hurt beneath the words. The moment hung between us, years of distance compressed into a single loaded exchange. Patricia, ever vigilant for social awkwardness, quickly intervened. "Richard, the Hendersons just arrived. You should greet them." She placed a hand on his arm, steering him away with practiced ease. Eleanor watched this interaction with shrewd eyes. Once they had moved away, she leaned closer to me. "Families can be the most difficult business of all to manage," she observed. "Sometimes those closest to us are the last to recognize our true capabilities." The wisdom in her words struck a chord. "Did you experience that too?" She laughed softly. "My dear, I built Wellington Industries while raising 3 children and caring for an ailing husband. Half the men in this room still express surprise when I understand basic financial concepts, despite the fact that I've been running circles around them for 40 years. Her candor was refreshing after hours of Patricia's artificial politeness. We continued our conversation, joined by others genuinely interested in my work. For the first time since arriving in Mapleton, I felt myself relaxing, speaking with the confidence I'd earned rather than the deference Patricia expected. Throughout the evening, I caught Dad watching me from across the room. During a brief lull in conversations, he approached, champagne glass in hand. "Could we talk?" he asked, gesturing toward his study. "Just for a minute." I nodded, excusing myself from Eleanor's group. We walked in silence to the book-lined room that had always been Dad's sanctuary. Once inside, he closed the door and turned to me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Abby, I had no idea about the company, about all you've accomplished." He ran a hand through his gray hair. "Why didn't you tell me?" The question stung, with its lack of self-awareness. "I tried, Dad, for years. Remember when I called about our Series A funding? Or sent the Forbes magazine? Or emailed about our expansion to Europe?" He winced. "I thought those were just... I didn't realize the scale." "Because Patricia always downplayed everything I did," I said quietly. "And you let her." He started to deny it, then stopped, the truth of my words sinking in. Before he could respond, the door opened, and Patricia appeared. "Richard, they're ready for the cake and speeches," she announced, her gaze darting between us. "Everything all right in here?" "We were just talking," Dad replied, a new firmness in his voice that surprised me. "It can wait," I added, not wanting to ruin his birthday celebration despite everything. "We should get back to your guests." Patricia's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Yes, quite a stir you've caused, Abigail. Who would have thought our little computer girl would become such a topic of conversation?" The condescension in her tone was so familiar it almost made me laugh. Some things never changed, regardless of external circumstances. "Technology is rather important these days," I replied mildly, "even in Mapleton." Dad looked between us, seeming to notice the tension with new awareness. "Patricia, could you give us another minute?" Her eyebrows rose in surprise at his assertion. "The caterers are waiting, Richard. Everyone is gathered." "1 minute," he repeated, more firmly than I'd heard him speak to her in 20 years. With visible reluctance, Patricia retreated, leaving the door slightly ajar. Dad turned to me, speaking quickly. "We'll talk later, properly. There's a lot I need to say, a lot I need to apologize for. But right now, go enjoy your party," I finished for him. "We'll find time." He squeezed my hand before we rejoined the celebration, the small gesture communicating more than words could in that moment. As the evening progressed, I noticed subtle shifts in the family dynamic. Ryan watched me with newfound curiosity, while Jessica's husband Tyler openly asked questions about my company's growth strategy. Patricia maintained her composed facade, but her repeated attempts to steer conversations away from my work became increasingly obvious to everyone. The most significant change was in Dad himself. During his birthday speech, he unexpectedly mentioned how proud he was of all three of his children, specifically noting my remarkable achievements in technology that I'm only beginning to understand. The acknowledgement, however belated, felt like the first crack in a wall that had stood between us for decades. By the time the party wound down near midnight, the balance of power had subtly but definitively shifted. I was no longer the family member to be managed and minimized, but someone whose presence added prestige to the gathering. Patricia's carefully constructed narrative about her perfect blended family had been disrupted by the simple reality of who I'd become without her approval or support. As guests departed, Eleanor Wellington hugged me goodbye, pressing a business card into my hand. "Next time you're in town, come see me. Wellington Industries could use someone with your vision on our board." The invitation, casual but sincere, represented everything Patricia had tried to deny me: recognition, respect, and a legitimate place in Mapleton's community based on my own merits. The last guests departed shortly after midnight. As the catering staff quietly cleaned up, the family gathered in the living room, the artificial harmony of the evening beginning to fray around the edges. The real conversation, the one I'd been both dreading and needing for 20 years, was finally impossible to avoid. The living room felt cavernous after the departure of the last guests. Jessica and Tyler had taken their sleepy children home, promising to return for brunch the next day. Ryan and his wife Amanda lingered, an unusual tension keeping them from their usual quick exit. Patricia moved efficiently around the room, straightening cushions and gathering stray napkins despite the cleaning crew handling the real work. Dad sat heavily in his favorite leather armchair, looking simultaneously exhausted and wired, the way people do when significant conversations loom. "Quite a successful evening," Patricia announced to no one in particular. Everyone who matters in Mapleton was here. "Everyone seemed very impressed with Abby," Ryan remarked, his tone carefully neutral. "Wellington Industries using your software is a big deal." Patricia's smile tightened. "Yes, well, Eleanor always did have a soft spot for Richard's daughter. She mentored many local girls." The deliberate minimization was so transparent I almost admired its consistency. "Actually, she implemented our enterprise solution after evaluating 6 competitors," I corrected mildly. "It was a purely business decision." An uncomfortable silence followed, broken by Dad clearing his throat. "Patricia, I'd like some time to talk with Abby. Alone." The request hung in the air like a challenge. Patricia's hand froze mid-adjustment of a throw pillow. "It's after midnight, Richard. Everyone's tired. Wouldn't tomorrow be better?" "Now is fine," I said quietly. "I don't mind." Ryan stood, sensing the shifting atmosphere. "Amanda and I should head up anyway. Big day." He hesitated, then added, "Good night, Dad. Happy birthday. Abby, it was good to see you actually getting recognition tonight." The sincerity in his voice surprised me. As he and Amanda left, Patricia remained standing, clearly reluctant to leave Dad and me unattended. "I'll make some tea," she finally announced. "We could all use something calming." After she disappeared toward the kitchen, Dad leaned forward, in his chair, elbows on knees. "I had no idea about the back door," he said without preamble. "I would never have allowed that." I studied his face, searching for the father I remembered. "Wouldn't you? You've allowed a lot of things over the years." He winced but didn't deny it. "I thought keeping peace was the most important thing. After your mother died, I was so afraid of failing you, of being alone. When Patricia came along, she seemed to know exactly what to do, how to run a family, She ran it by pushing me to the edges, I said, 20 years of hurt finally finding voice. And you let her. I know. His admission hung in the air between us. I told myself you were strong, independent like your mother, that you didn't need as much attention as Ryan and Jessica. I convinced myself I was being fair when I was actually being a coward. The kitchen door swung open as Patricia returned with a tea tray, her timing impeccable as always. She arranged 3 cups with precise movements, passing one to Dad with a spoonful of honey, just as he preferred. "What are we discussing so seriously?" she asked, her light tone belied by the tension in her shoulders. Dad looked at her directly. "I was explaining to Abby that I've failed her as a father." Patricia nearly dropped the teacup she was extending toward me. "Richard, what a terrible thing to say. You've been nothing but supportive of Abigail's endeavors." "Have I?" He turned to me. "When was the last time I called just to ask about your life? Or visited you in Boston? Or really listened when you tried to share your accomplishments?" Patricia set the tea tray down with more force than necessary. "This is hardly the time for self-recrimination. It's been a lovely evening. Everyone's tired." "It's exactly the time," I interrupted, meeting her gaze directly. 20 years. Overdue, actually. Something cold flickered in Patricia's eyes. "Abigail, I understand you're feeling emotional after receiving some attention tonight, but don't do that," I said evenly. "Don't minimize me or my feelings. Not anymore." "I don't know what you're talking about," she replied, but her tight smile had vanished. "You directed me to enter my father's birthday party through the service entrance," I stated flatly. "I heard you laughing about it afterward, saying you couldn't have me coming through the front while the Wilsons were arriving." Dad's head snapped toward Patricia. "You did what?" Patricia flushed. "That's completely out of context. The front was congested. I was trying to make things easier." "You've been trying to make me invisible in this family for 20 years, I continued, surprised by my own calm. "Interrupting when I speak about my work, assigning me the smallest room, excluding me from family photos, 1,000 small cuts designed to keep me on the outside." "That's ridiculous," Patricia protested, but her voice lacked conviction. "I've always treated you like my own daughter." "No," I said softly. "You never have, and we both know it." A tense silence filled the room. Dad looked between us, dawning comprehension on his face. The kitchen door swung open again, revealing Ryan. "Sorry, forgot my phone." He paused, registering the charged atmosphere. "Everything okay?" "Your sister is making some rather dramatic accusations," Patricia said tightly. Ryan hesitated, then fully entered the room. "About what?" "About being treated like an outsider. In this family," I said. "About Patricia systematically undermining my relationship with Dad for 2 decades. I expected Ryan to automatically defend his mother. Instead, he sank into the nearest chair, looking uncomfortable, but not surprised. "Ryan, tell your sister how ridiculous this is," Patricia prompted. He met my eyes. "Is that why you stayed away all these years? Because of how Mom treated you?" The simple question, devoid of denial, spoke volumes. "Partly," I acknowledged. "And partly because every time I tried to share my life, my work, it was dismissed or redirected." Ryan nodded slowly. "I noticed that. I just thought—" "I don't know what I thought." "This is absurd," Patricia interjected. "I've done nothing but try to include Abigail in our family. If she chose to distance herself, that was her decision." "Mom," Ryan said quietly, "remember when Abby sent that magazine with her interview? You put it in the recycling. I saw you." Patricia's face flushed. It was cluttering the coffee table. "And when she called about that big investment in her company, you told Dad it was probably just marketing hype." Dad's expression darkened. "You said it wasn't worth mentioning." Patricia's composure began to crack. "I was protecting you. She left us. focused on her career instead of family. I didn't want you getting your hopes up about her suddenly caring about us again. I never stopped caring, I said, my voice catching. I stopped trying to make you see me. The kitchen door opened once more, and Jessica appeared in silk pajamas, clearly having returned from her house down the street. Tyler told me there was some kind of confrontation happening, she announced, glancing around the room. What's going on? Family honesty hour, Ryan replied dryly. Turns out Abby's been feeling excluded for years, and Mom's been facilitating that. Jessica looked between us, then settled her gaze on me. Is this about the backdoor thing? Because that was obviously awful. Even Tyler noticed. Patricia made a strangled sound. Jessica! What? It was humiliating, Mom. Making the most successful person in the room use the service entrance? People were talking about it. The unified front I'd expected to face was crumbling in real time. Patricia looked from one family member to another, finding no allies. I have always done what's best for this family, she said, voice trembling, slightly. I've devoted my life to creating stability for all of you after tragedy. For two of us, Ryan corrected gently. Not for Abby. She was going to leave anyway, Patricia burst out, her careful facade finally cracking. Smart, ambitious, just like her mother. Richard couldn't see it, but I could. She was always going to choose success over family. Why should I invest in someone who would never prioritize us? The naked truth of her insecurity hung in the air. Dad stared at his wife as if seeing her clearly for the first time. So you pushed her away before she could leave on her own, he said slowly. And I let you. Patricia's eyes filled with tears. I was trying to protect us, to keep our family solid. By excluding 1/3 of it? Jessica asked, sounding genuinely confused. That math doesn't work, Mom. Patricia turned to me, desperation replacing her usual poise. You have to understand. After losing my first husband, building this new family with Richard was everything. You were so independent, so much your own person. I was afraid you'd convince him to put you first, like he always had before I came along. The admission was more honest than anything she'd said to me in 20 years. Not an apology, but at least an explanation. I never wanted to come between Dad and anyone, I said quietly. I just wanted to remain his daughter while you became his wife. Dad stood, abruptly, moving to the window that overlooked the now dark garden. I've failed everyone in this room, he said, his back to us. Patricia, I let you manage my relationship with Abby because it was easier than standing firm. Abby, I abandoned you emotionally when you needed me most. Ryan and Jessica, I modeled cowardice instead of courage. He turned, his eyes wet. I don't know if we can fix this, but I want to try. Patricia moved toward him, reaching for his hand. Richard, you're exhausted. This isn't the time. He gently but firmly withdrew his hand. It's exactly the time. 20 years late, like Abby said. The simple act of resistance seemed to deflate Patricia completely. She sank onto the sofa, suddenly looking older and very tired. What do you want from me? She asked me directly. Acknowledgement, I replied without hesitation. Recognition. That what you did was deliberate and harmful. And a commitment to change if you want me in your lives going forward. She nodded slowly, not quite an agreement, but at least not a denial. Ryan cleared his throat. For what it's worth, I've always been jealous of you, Abby. You had the courage to leave, to build something entirely your own. No family legacy, no handed-down business, just your brain and your guts. His candor startled me. I've been jealous. Of your closeness with Dad, I admitted. Of having his attention and approval. Jessica sighed heavily. Well, this is depressing. We've all been horrible to each other for decades. Great birthday revelation, Dad. Despite everything, A surprised laugh escaped me. Jessica's dramatic delivery broke the tension slightly. Dad moved to sit beside me on the couch. "I can't change the past 20 years, he said, taking my hand. "But I want to be part of your life going forward, Abby. The real life, not the watered-down version I've been getting." "I'd like that," I said softly. "But things have to be different." "They will be," he promised, glancing meaningfully at Patricia. She met his gaze, then mine. No words, but a slight nod that acknowledged the shifting reality between us. As the clock in the hallway chimed 1, we all recognized the conversation had reached its natural conclusion for the night. Real reconciliation would require more than one honest exchange, but the foundation had been laid. Ryan and Jessica departed for their respective beds, both pausing to give me awkward but sincere hugs. Patricia excused herself without further comment, her rigid posture conveying her emotional state more clearly than words. Dad lingered, decades of unspoken feelings hanging between us. "I'm so proud of you, Abby," he finally said. "Not because of your success or what those people tonight think of you. Because you built a life on your terms, despite everything. Your mother would be so proud too." The simple words, so long withheld, finally unlocked the tears I'd been holding back. As he pulled me into a hug, I felt something long broken begin the process of healing. The morning after Dad's birthday party dawned with the strange quietness that follows emotional upheaval. I woke early, habit rather than design, and made my way downstairs expecting an empty kitchen. Instead, I found Dad at the counter, measuring coffee grounds with careful precision. "You still use the same brand," I observed, noting the familiar red package. He looked up with a small smile. "Some things don't change. Coffee preferences, stubbornness, poor communication skills." The self-deprecating comment invited a lightness I hadn't felt around him in years. "Speak for yourself. My communication skills are excellent. I give quarterly presentations to hundreds of people. Easier than talking to family, I bet." He started the coffee maker and turned to face me fully. "Patricia's sleeping in. Ryan and his family are having breakfast at that new place on Main Street. Jessica won't surface before 10. The deliberate accounting of everyone's whereabouts made his intention clear. We had time alone. We carried our coffee to the back patio, watching early morning sunlight filter through the maple trees that bordered the property. For several minutes, we sat in companionable silence, the first comfortable quiet we'd shared in decades. "I'm seeing someone," Dad finally said, staring into his mug. "A therapist, I mean. Have been for about 6 months." The admission surprised me. "That's really good, Dad." He nodded. "Should have done it years ago after your mother died. Instead, I just tried to replace what was broken." He glanced toward the house, and I understood he meant more than just the loss of Mom. "How's it going?" I asked. "Hard, necessary." He took a sip of coffee. "He's been asking about you, why we're not close. I've been feeding him excuses, but last night made it impossible to keep lying to myself." "What kind of excuses?" "That you were busy. That success changed you. That you outgrew us." He shook his head. "But it was me who changed, who failed to grow, who let fear of disrupting my second chance at family cost me my relationship with my daughter." The direct acknowledgement left no room for polite deflection. "I was angry for a long time," I admitted. "Then I was hurt. Eventually, I just became resigned." "And now?" I considered the question seriously. "Now, I'm cautiously optimistic. Last night was hard but necessary, like therapy." He smiled at that. "I told Patricia I want us to try couples. Counseling. This isn't just about you and me. It's about patterns that have hurt everyone." "How did she take that suggestion? About how you'd expect?" His wry tone conveyed volumes. But she agreed. I think last night scared her. Seeing Ryan and Jessica? Side with the truth rather than automatically defending her. We talked for nearly 2 hours, covering ground that should have been traversed years earlier. Dad asked detailed questions about my company, my life in Boston, even my past relationships. I shared the real version, not the sanitized edition, I'd previously offered during brief holiday calls. In turn, he spoke candidly about his marriage, admitting the compromises that had gradually eroded his autonomy. I thought keeping peace meant avoiding conflict at all costs, he explained. Instead, I was just postponing inevitable reckonings while losing pieces of myself. As we cleared our coffee cups, Dad hesitated in the kitchen doorway. I'd like to visit you in Boston, see your company, your life there, if that's something you'd be open to. I'd like that, I said, meaning it. Though I should warn you, my guest room is bigger than the blue room here, and nobody will direct you to the service entrance. His laugh held equal parts amusement and regret. I deserve that. Seriously, though, yes. Come visit. I'd love to show you everything. As I packed to leave later that morning, Patricia appeared in my doorway. Her usual perfect appearance showed subtle cracks, hair not quite as precisely styled, eyes showing evidence of a restless night. "May I come in?" she asked formally. I nodded, continuing to fold clothes into my suitcase. She perched on the edge of the twin bed, hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I won't insult you with a facile apology," she began. "What happened over years can't be undone with simple words." "No, it can't," I agreed. "I was wrong," she said, the admission clearly difficult for her. "My insecurity doesn't justify how I treated you. I can see that now, even if I'm not entirely sure how to change patterns established over decades." Her honesty, however belated, deserved equal candor. "I don't know if you and I will ever have a warm relationship," I told her. "Too much has happened, but we can have a respectful one, for Dad's sake and for our own peace." She nodded slowly. "Richard mentioned you agreed to him visiting Boston." "Yes, and you would be welcome too if you wanted to come." The invitation surprised us both. Patricia looked momentarily flustered. "I'll consider that. Thank you." It wasn't forgiveness or reconciliation, but it was an opening, a small crack in a wall that had seemed impenetrable for 20 years. As I drove away from Mapleton that afternoon, the familiar landscape held different meaning than when I'd arrived. The same buildings, trees, and landmarks, but viewed through the lens of tentative hope rather than resigned hurt. Returning to Boston and the demanding rhythm of my company provided welcome normalcy after the emotional intensity of the visit. My leadership team noticed a subtle shift in my management style over the following weeks, a greater emphasis on clear communication, on ensuring every voice was heard in meetings, on acknowledging contributions directly rather than assuming recognition was obvious. The lessons from my family dynamic found surprising applications in my professional life. Perhaps most significantly, I recognized patterns where I had unintentionally created hierarchies that made some team members feel excluded or undervalued, mimicking in small ways the very behaviors that had hurt me. Dad called weekly, our conversations gradually developing depth and authenticity. He sent me childhood photos he'd kept in his office desk, including several of Mom that Patricia had removed from family albums. Each image arrived with handwritten notes about the memory attached, small efforts to rebuild the connection between us. 2 months after the birthday party, Ryan called unexpectedly. "I'm thinking about starting my own construction company," he confided, "focusing on sustainable building practices. Dad's company is solid but stuck in old methodologies." "That's a big step," I observed, breaking away from the family business. "Yeah, well, seeing you stand your ground made me realize I've been accepting limitations that don't need to exist." We began trading occasional texts about business challenges, developing a relationship independent of our shared family history. 6 months after Dad's birthday, he made good on his promise to visit Boston. He arrived alone. Patricia had a prior commitment that we all recognized as reluctance, and spent 3 days immersed in my world. I showed him our company headquarters, introduced him to my leadership team, and watched with quiet satisfaction as he gradually understood the scope of what I'd built. The pride in his eyes when he saw employees approach me with respect and genuine affection healed something I hadn't realized was still wounded. "Your mother would have absolutely loved this," he said as we toured the innovation lab. "She always said you'd change the world someday." The visit established a new template for our relationship, one based on mutual respect and genuine interest rather than obligation. When he returned to Mapleton, Dad became an unexpected ambassador for my success, speaking about my company with the pride he'd once reserved for Ryan's achievements. Patricia's adjustment proved slower and more halting. Our interactions remained cordial but distant, though she made visible efforts to acknowledge my accomplishments when they came up in conversation. The couples therapy she and Dad attended gradually revealed deeper issues in their marriage, leading to difficult but necessary reassessments of their relationship. 1 year after the fateful birthday party, I hosted Dad's 61st celebration at my Boston apartment. The gathering was smaller, but infinitely warmer. Ryan and his wife flew in, Jessica and Tyler sent a video message, and even Patricia made an appearance, though she maintained a careful emotional distance throughout the evening. The contrast between the two birthdays couldn't have been starker. No elaborate decorations or performative social interactions, just genuine connection among people working toward healthier relationships. After the others had gone to their hotels, Dad and I sat on my balcony overlooking the Boston skyline, reminiscent of our morning coffee conversation a year earlier. "What a difference a year makes," he mused, swirling the scotch in his glass. "Last birthday I had everything I thought I wanted. The big house, the community standing, the picture-perfect family gathering. And I was completely disconnected from what actually mattered." "And now?" I prompted. He smiled. "Now I'm sleeping in the guest room of my own house half the time while Patricia and I figure out if our marriage can be salvaged. My son is leaving the family business. My stepdaughter is questioning her own choices after watching everyone else make changes, and I'm happier than I've been in 20 years. The paradox made perfect sense to me. "Because it's real," I said. "All of it. The mess, the uncertainty, the difficult conversations." "Exactly." He raised his glass in a small toast to reality over appearances. The journey of healing continued beyond that night, with setbacks and progress in equal measure. Some wounds were too deep for complete recovery, while other connections strengthened in ways I never anticipated. Patricia and I established a détente based on mutual respect, if not affection. Ryan discovered his passion for sustainable building practices. Jessica began therapy to address her own insecurities about measuring up to her mother's expectations. The most profound change occurred within me. Success had never been the problem. I'd achieved that through my own determination despite the obstacles. What transformed was my understanding of worth and recognition. I no longer needed Patricia's approval or even Dad's validation to feel complete. I had built a life that reflected my values, surrounded myself with people who appreciated my authentic self, and learned that family could be both chosen and biological. The moment Eleanor Wellington recognized me in that kitchen doorway hadn't changed who I was. I had already been a successful CEO, already built something meaningful. What changed was the perception of others, revealing the superficiality of the judgments that had seemed so important. The backdoor incident, humiliating as it was, had ultimately forced truth into the open. Sometimes we need to be directed to the wrong entrance to finally find the right path forward. Have you ever had a moment when someone's recognition completely changed how others saw you? Or when family dynamics shifted because of success? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear that their worth isn't determined by family recognition. Thank you for listening to my journey from backdoor to boardroom. May your own path be filled with the courage to stand in your truth, regardless of who tries to diminish it.